Section 4 of Rewards and Fairies by Rudyard Kipling. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Rewards and Fairies by Rudyard Kipling. Section 4. The Wrong Thing. A Truthful Song. The Bricklayer. I tell this tale, which is strictly true, just by way of convincing you how very little since things were made, things have altered in the building trade. A year ago, come the middle of March, we was building flats near the Marble Arch when a thin young man with coal-black hair came up to watch us working there. Now there wasn't a trick in brick or stone that this young man hadn't seen or known, nor there wasn't a tool from trowel to maul but this young man could use 'em all. Then up and spoke the plumbers bold, which was layin' the pipes for the hot and cold. Since you with us have made so free, will you kindly say what your name might be? The young man kindly answered them. It might be Lot or Methusalem, or it might be Moses, a man I hate, whereas it is Pharaoh, surnamed the Great. Your glazing is new, and your plumbing strange, but otherwise I perceive no change, and in less than a month, if you do as I bid, I'll learn you to build me a pyramid. The Sailor. I tell this tale, which is stricter true, just by way of convincing you how very little since things were made, things have altered in the shipwright's trade. In Blackwall Basin yesterday a china bark refitting lay, when a fat old man with snow-white hair came up to watch us working there. Now there wasn't a knot which the riggers knew, but the old man made it, and better too. Nor there wasn't a sheet or lift or brace, but the old man knew its lead and place. Then up and spake the caulkyers bold, which was packing the pump in the afterhold. Since you with us have made so free, will you kindly tell what your name might be? The old man kindly answered them. It might be Japhet, it might be Shem, or it might be Ham, though his skin was dark, whereas it is Noah commanding the ark. Your wheel is new, and your pumps are strange, but otherwise I perceive no change, and in less than a week, if she did not ground, I'd sail this hooker the wide world round. The Wrong Thing. Dan had gone in for building model boats, but after he had filled the schoolroom with chips, which he expected Una to clear away, they turned him out of doors, and he took all his tools up the hill to Mr. Springett's yard, where he knew he could make as much mess as he chose. Old Mr. Springett was a builder, contractor, and sanitary engineer, and his yard, which opened off the village street, was always full of interesting things. At one end of it was a long loft, reached by a ladder, where he kept his iron-bound scaffold planks, tins of paints, pulleys, and odds and ends he found in old houses. He would sit here by the hour, watching his carts as they loaded or unloaded in the yard below, while Dan gouged and grunted at the carpenter's bench near the loft window. Mr. Springett and Dan had always been particular friends, for Mr. Springett was so old he could remember when railways were being made in the southern counties of England, and people were allowed to drive dogs in carts. One hot, still afternoon, the tar paper on the roof smelt like ships. Dan, in his shirt-sleeves, was smoothing down a new schooner's bow, and Mr. Springett was talking of barns and houses he had built. He said he never forgot any stick or stone he had ever handled, or any man, woman, or child he had ever met. Just then he was very proud of the village hall at the entrance of the village, which he had finished a few weeks before. "And I don't mind telling you, Mr. Dan," he said, that the hall will be my last job top of this mortal earth. I didn't make £10, no, nor yet 5, out of the whole contract, but my name's lettered on the foundation stone, Ralph Springett, builder. And the stone she's bedded on 4-foot good concrete. If she shifts any time these 500 years, I'll surely turn in my grave. I told the London architect so when he came down to oversee my work." "What did he say?" Dan was sandpapering the schooner's port bow. "Nothing. The hall ain't more than one of his small jobs for him, but 'tain't small to me, and my name is cut and lettered, frontin' the village street, I do hope and pray, for time everlastin'. You'll want the little round file for that holler in her bow." "Who's there?" Mr. Springett turned stiffly in his chair. A long pile of scaffold planks ran down the center of the loft. Dan looked and saw Hal of the Draft's tousled head beyond them. See Hal of the Draft and Puck of Pook's Hill. "Be you the builder of the village hall?" he asked of Mr. Springett. "I be," was the answer. "But if you want a job—" Hal laughed. "No, faith," he said. "Only the hall is as good and honest a piece of work as I've ever run a rule over. So, being born hereabouts, and being reckoned a master among masons, and accepted as a master mason, I made bold to pay my brotherly respects to the builder." Mr. Springett looked important. "I be a bit rusty, but I'll try ye." He asked Hal several curious questions, and the answers must have pleased him, for he invited Hal to sit down. Hal moved up, always keeping behind the pile of planks, so that only his head showed, and sat down on a trestle in the dark corner at the back of Mr. Springett's desk. He took no notice of Dan, but talked at once to Mr. Springett about bricks and cement and lead and glass, and after a while Dan went on with his work. He knew Mr. Springett was pleased, because he tugged his white sandy beard and smoked his pipe in short puffs. The two men seemed to agree about everything, but when grown-ups agree, they interrupt each other almost as much as if they were quarreling. Hal said something about workmen. "Why, that's what I always say!" Mr. Springett cried. "A man who can do only one thing, he's but next above fool to the man that can't do nothin'. That's where the unions made their mistake." "My thought to the very dot." Dan heard Hal slap his tight-hosed leg. "I've suffered in my time from those same guilds. Unions, do you call 'em? All their precious talk of the mysteries of their trades. Why, what does it come to?" "Nothin'. You just about hit it," said Mr. Springett, and rammed his hot tobacco with his thumb. "Take the art of wood carving," Hal went on. He reached across the planks, grabbed a wooden mallet, and moved his other hand as though he wanted something. Mr. Springett, without a word, passed him one of Dan's broad chisels. "Ah, wood carving, for example. If you can cut wood and have a fair draft of what you mean to do, a heaven's name, take chisel and maul and let drive at it, say I. You'll soon find all the mystery, forsooth, of wood carving under your proper hand." Whack came the mallet on the chisel, and a sliver of wood curled up in front of it. Mr. Springett watched like an old raven. "All art is one, man, one," said Hal between whacks. "And to wait on another man to finish out your work ain't no sense," Mr. Springett cut in. "That's what I'm always sayin' to the boy here." He nodded towards Dan. "That's what I said when I put the new wheel into Brewster's mill in 1872. I reckoned I was millwright enough for the job 'thout bringin' a man from Lunnon. And besides, divided work eats up profits no bounds." Hal laughed his beautiful deep laugh, and Mr. Springett joined in till Dan laughed too. "You handle your tools, I can see," said Mr. Springett. "I reckon, if you're anyway like me, you've found yourself hindered by those guilds, did you call 'em? Unions, we say." "You may say so." Hal pointed to a white scar on his cheekbone. "This is a remembrance from the master watching foreman of masons on Magdalen Tower, because, please you, I dared to carve stone.